Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Jutin. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these screens behind me. These are monitors that are monitoring what's happening at our CBS stations and affiliates across the country. If it's happening out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here. Let's begin. President-elect Donald Trump is standing by as Attorney General picked Matt Gaetz despite new details on sexual misconduct allegations. We'll hear from a lawyer representing two of his accusers. Today marks 1,000 days since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine, and the war shows no signs of slowing down. We'll have the very latest from the battlefield. And a new twist in the case of the Menendez brothers, why California's governor is delaying his clemency decision on their murder convictions. This is CBS News 24/7. Got some breaking news to share with you this morning. Russia is reportedly vowing to retaliate following the Kremlin's claims that Ukraine launched a strike using those U.S.-made long-range missiles that were recently approved for use by President Biden. Let's bring in CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata, who's got the late-breaking details for us this morning. Charlie, what do we know?
Yeah, well, Vlad, I just spoke to a couple of sources here at the Pentagon trying to get a confirmation that these ATACMS have been used on Russian soil for the first time. These are U.S.-supplied ATACM weapons, those long-range weapons fired from Ukrainian, or sorry, may even be Russian soil, into Russian soil. It was first reported overnight with the Ukrainian media. Then the Russians themselves said that they had come under attack by ATACMS, Storm Shadows, which are the British version of those long-range weapons, and some drones on an ammunition site not far from Kursk. So this would mark the first time that the ATACMS, these U.S.-supplied ATACMS, have been used on Russian soil. It's worth pointing out, by the way, ATACMS have been used for a number of months on Ukrainian soil. These are the same weapons. These are longer range, carrying a different warhead, for the first time being used against Russian targets on Russian soil.
So, Charlie, President Putin just revised his country's doctrine on the use of nuclear weapons. That is also breaking this morning. What's the reaction in the Pentagon to that?
It is. And, you know, I've just come back from walking the halls, and it's something that they're taking seriously. Now, in terms of saber rattling and in terms of ratcheting it up with the nuclear threat, that is nothing new. That's how it was described to me just now. However, he was fairly specific, and we have to think about the timing. This is literally right after it was announced that these ATACMS could be used, that the White House said, OK, we're going to give you the green light. This is in reaction to that. And what it states, and this is where it becomes important, that if a non-nuclear state attacks Russia, as well as the backing of a nuclear state, so if a non-nuclear state like Ukraine, the backing of a nuclear state, without naming them, like the United States attacks Russia, then Russia reserves the right to defend itself using its nuclear weapons. So that is the step forward. It's very specific about the wording that it's using. It's a threat. Now, but I have to tell you, there again, quoting officials here, there's been nothing to indicate that anything has changed in terms of Russia's nuclear posture or anything in terms of America's defense for that nuclear posture. And there are many signals, many flags that go up if there is a change in terms of moving weapons around or in terms of readiness. So yes, the rhetoric is there. It's rhetoric that they're taking seriously, but there isn't anything to indicate that Russia is on more of a war footing in terms of their nuclear weapons.
All right, Charlie D'Agata reporting from the Pentagon for us this morning. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
So the news that this possible Russian retaliation after those reported Ukrainian missile strikes comes as the world marks exactly 1,000 days since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began. In an address to the European Parliament today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warns things could still get worse before they get better.
As friends of Ukraine, together we have accomplished much, but we must not fear doing even more. Putin is focused on winning this war. He will not stop on his own. The more time he has, the worse the conditions become.
CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams is on the ground in Ukraine. Holly.
The Ukrainian city of Odessa has been hit by Russian strikes twice in 2 days. Ukrainian officials say that 10 people were killed yesterday in a drone and missile attack on a residential neighborhood. The day before, the power grid in Odessa was targeted, destroying several homes. The images from the aftermath are what we've seen over and over again here in Ukraine. And today marks 1,000 days of war. 1,000 days since Vladimir Putin sent his tanks and warplanes into Ukraine. Ukraine can now fight back with American-supplied ATACMS after the US gave permission in recent days for the missiles to be used on targets deep inside Russia. Some of the ATACMS have a range of close to 200 miles. We spoke with the commander of a Special Forces detachment in Ukraine's state border guard last month, who hinted that if given permission to use the ATACMS on Russia by the US, Ukraine would target ammunition storage and military airfields. Russia says the US is adding fuel to the fire with the move. In September, Vladimir Putin warned that if the US allowed Ukraine to use the ATACMS inside Russia, it would mean that America and Russia were at war. Back to you.
All right, Holly, thank you very much. Controversy continues to stir around President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General Matt Gaetz. A lawyer for two women who've accused Gaetz of sexual misconduct say his clients told him and told the House committee that they were paid to have sex with Gaetz and to travel with him on multiple occasions. One also says she witnessed Gaetz having sex with a minor. Gaetz has denied all wrongdoing and called the committee's investigation a smear. CBS News chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett spoke with the attorney representing the two women who testified before the House committee.
She arrived at the party. She had sex with Representative Gaetz within minutes of her arrival. Later on, when she was walking out to the pool area, she observed to her right Representative Gaetz having sex with her friend, who was 17 at the time.
And on this question, she's absolutely sure.
She's absolutely certain that she observed seeing her friend and Representative Gaetz having sex against what she described as a game table of some sort.
If the House Ethics Committee report were to be made public, what do you think it would reveal?
My clients want to know that this happened and it's real. They didn't vote in the last two elections. They don't care one way or another. But they do want the public to know that they're not lying. They did not come forward willingly. They've never spoken to anyone without the force of a legal subpoena. The testimonies of her and the other 11 individuals that testified would show that this actually did happen, and the American people would know, and they could decide if that's the person they want to be the next Attorney General of the United States.
In a statement to CBS News following the interview, a spokesperson for the Trump transition said, quote, Matt Gaetz will be the next Attorney General. He went on to say, quote, these are baseless allegations intended to derail the second Trump administration. I want to bring in CBS News political reporter Olivia Rinaldi for this. So, Olivia, what are you hearing from the Trump camp? Were they at all surprised by the reports and the allegations, or was this something that they had vetted him for?
Well, Vlad, it's good to be with you. Sources tell me they're still going to stick beside Gaetz as he goes through this process in the Senate, but they were aware of this House ethics report. This was investigated previously, through the DOJ, and we know that it started under the Trump administration, under Bill Barr, his attorney general, started this investigation into Matt Gaetz for some of this misconduct. It then was taken on by the Biden Justice Department, and they declined to press charges. So some of this was aware and out there, certainly before the Trump team decided to pick him for Attorney General. But I'm told they are planning to stick by him and follow this and see it through. Trump is dead set on getting this nomination through, but some senators are already casting doubt on whether or not that nomination is possible. Senator Joni Ernst telling reporters yesterday that that's a tough hill for him to climb to get this nomination. She's a Republican from Iowa, Vlad.
Yeah, it's a good point that you make, Olivia, about the investigations that were conducted on Congressman Gaetz. I have friends who are supporters of President-elect Trump who said to me, oh, isn't this a liberal plot to get Gaetz? And I said, well, what you just reported, which was that this started under the Bill Barr Justice Department, and ultimately, when President Biden was elected, his Justice Department chose not to pursue this, and the House, obviously being controlled by the Republicans, their pursuit of this report, of these allegations, was driven by Republican leadership. So that's Matt Gaetz. Let's talk about the choice to lead the Department of Transportation. He's a current Fox Business host. His name's Sean Duffy. He's also a former reality star. What else can you tell him about it? What else can you tell us about it?
And he's also a former congressman. He represented Wisconsin from 2011 to 2019. But as you mentioned, left Congress and is now a Fox Business host. But Duffy served on the House Financial Services Committee, but no committees involving transportation. So interesting thing there. But I'm told with sources in the transportation community that he's being well received. And in his announcement, President-elect Trump said that Duffy would be focused on a range of issues. We know there's been a lot going on as far as airspace, aviation, and innovation there. We have a decaying air traffic control system in the country. There's also been numerous issues with Boeing that a new Department of Transportation secretary would have to take on, but also just in recent days, Spirit Airlines declaring bankruptcy. These are all issues that an incoming chair or secretary is going to have to handle when it comes to that.
All right, Olivia Rinaldi reporting for us from West Palm Beach this morning. Thank you, Olivia. All right, a Manhattan Supreme Court judge is expected to decide soon if presidential immunity applies to Donald Trump's hush money conviction. Defense attorneys claim the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity for official acts should apply in this case. Judge Juan Merchan was expected to make his ruling last week, but delayed it by at least a week. You'll remember that Trump was found guilty on 34 counts related to payments made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. He has maintained his innocence. Trump was scheduled to be sentenced on November 26, but now that date is unclear. CBS News political reporter Katrina Kaufman will have much more on this and how it could unfold in the next hour. Meanwhile, the future of the president-elect's interference case in Georgia is also uncertain. A judge has canceled arguments for his appeal of that ruling that allowed Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis to stay on the case. Arguments were scheduled for the first week of December. Willis has signaled she plans to keep working on that case against Trump. His legal team had sought to remove the DA from the case, claiming her prior relationship with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade created a conflict of interest. All right, let's get to some weather now. A 40-acre wildfire has broken out in the town of Hainesport. Guess where that is? Southern New Jersey. That is just east of the city of Philadelphia. Fire officials say it's just about 50% contained right now. No homes or buildings are under any threat from the fire, but this is just the latest in a string of fires in the state as the Northeast continues to struggle through a drought. The cause of the fire is under investigation. So let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the first look at the national forecast. Grant.
Vlad, it's crazy. You've got fire concerns, red flag warnings for states like Massachusetts. Meanwhile, you've got an incredibly powerful bomb cyclone, which is essentially a strengthening low pressure system that's going to feed in one of the strongest atmospheric rivers of the season so far. This low pressure system, they're heading toward the Pacific Northwest, will bring significant impacts over the next several days. We're talking about heavy rainfall. Some places could see nearly 20 inches of rain. You've got flash flooding concerns, heavy snow in the higher elevations, up to 3 feet of snowfall, and then strong winds where along the coast we could see wind gusts near 80 miles per hour. Obviously, this is going to have significant impact with power outages and travel disruptions through the remainder of the week. Let me just show you some of the advisories that are out already. And one of the more impressive ones is this hurricane force wind warning just off the coast of Oregon, where, again, wind speeds could be in excess of 74 miles per hour, which is hurricane force strength. You've got winter storm concerns, especially blizzard warnings in effect currently for portions of Washington state. Those wind gusts are going to increase through the day today, 40 to 50 mile per hour gusts as that storm moves inland. Vlad will talk more about the rainfall because that's going to be an increasing concern for places like Northern California and Oregon as we head through the middle of the week. More on that forecast with the rainfall in the rest of the country in just a little bit. Back to you.
All right, Grant, thanks very much. Testimony could wrap today in the Jose Ibarra trial. He's accused in the murder of 22-year-old Laken Riley. We're outside the courthouse next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Breaking news out of Capitol Hill. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries has just been reelected as the House Democratic Minority Leader for just another 2 years. Democrats are holding their leadership elections today as the party seeks to keep its leadership intact following the 2024 election losses. Republicans are expected to have a narrow majority in the next Congress. Meanwhile, over to Los Angeles now, where the Menendez brothers' bid for freedom will not be ruled on until at least next year. That's because California Governor Gavin Newsom says he wants their request for clemency to be reviewed by the new Los Angeles County District Attorney. The current and now outgoing DA asked the judge back in October to resentence the brothers for the 1989 murder of their parents. Of course, the case gained renewed interest in recent months from a new documentary and a docuseries on Netflix. A family in Las Vegas is demanding answers from police who shot and killed a man in his own home. Newly released body camera video shows 43-year-old Brandon Durham struggling with an alleged intruder last week when an officer fired his weapon. A warning for our viewers, the following video is disturbing. CBS News correspondent Carter Evans has the latest.
Red beanie, wearing a black sweatshirt and dark colored pants.
Police arrived at this Las Vegas residence responding to a potential home invasion. The caller, real estate agent Brandon Durham, who told the operator that he and his daughter were going to lock themselves in their rooms.
Hey, they said they made entry. We got to go in there.
The video shows Officer Alexander Bookman entering the house.
Hey, kick it!
Hey, drop the knife!
Then he sees two people struggling with a knife.
Hey, drop the knife!
The officer fires his weapon, striking Durham. We're freezing the video before he goes down. Bookman then fires 5 more rounds at Durham on the ground.
Put your hands up!
He was pronounced dead at the scene.
He was screaming for help in his home with a visible intruder in a red hoodie and a ski mask. And you shoot my brother?
And now his family's pushing for answers.
And he called the police for safety, and instead he was brutally murdered. Someone needs to explain to me why my son is not here with us today.
The loss of life in any type of incident like this is always tragic, and it's something we take very seriously.
Bookman is now on paid leave while Las Vegas Metro PD investigates whether he acted appropriately or should face criminal charges.
You know, every time a police officer uses force, he has to be able to articulate why he used that force. And even if he did use that one round, how is it that he continued shooting after the person was down in such a rapid succession? It's going to have a lot of explaining.
In Georgia, we could soon have a verdict in the murder trial that dominated the immigration debate in the 2024 election. The prosecution is wrapping up its case against Jose Ibarra. He's an undocumented immigrant accused of killing nursing student Laken Riley. Let's bring in CBS News producer Jared Eggleston, who's been following this case for us from the very beginning and joins me now. Jared, the prosecution said yesterday that they only needed half a day more to make their argument. What have you heard in court so far today, and how soon do you think they should be wrapping up?
Vlad, good morning. It has been another emotional morning in the courthouse behind me here. Already this morning, we've heard more testimony from law enforcement officers, the GBI agent, the lead agent that's on the stand right now, testifying about some graphic details about what Laken Riley's body was like when they found him. It's so gruesome that some of the family stepped out ahead of that testimony. Also this morning, some more emotional moments. Laken Riley's mother seen crying as another law enforcement officer talked about the final text messages that Laken sent in the hour, or really in the minutes before she encountered what prosecutors say was Jose Ibarra. That last message was to her mother, Vlad. The prosecution, like you said, indicated late yesterday that they intend to wrap up around lunchtime today, saying they only needed about a half of a day. So we will expect to hear the prosecution side, or the defense side, I should say, after lunch, Vlad.
All right, Jared, thank you very much. Appreciate it. U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein says there is a real opportunity to bring the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah to an end. The senior U.S. official told reporters in Beirut that ending the hostilities is, quote, within our grasp. I want to bring in CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer to talk more about this. So, Elizabeth, those are some heartening words. Where do we stand on this ceasefire along Israel's northern border, and what do we know about what a potential deal might look like?
Well, it's clear that a deal is in the works. That's good news. Some of the people close to the talks are saying it's not imminent. It's constructive discussion, but it's not imminent. Essentially, it appears as if it will restore the conditions that were agreed after the 2006 war. That is, that Hezbollah will withdraw about 20 miles north of the Israeli border along the Litani River, and both sides will stop fighting. There are two sticking points, apparently, according to the Lebanese press. One is the international oversight. There is some pressure that a European country might be called in to keep an eye on this ceasefire, but the Lebanese would like to do it themselves or have their own military do it. And the other one is that Israel at the moment is demanding that it have a right to strike Hezbollah if it thinks the ceasefire has been breached. And of course, there's a lot of pushback from Hezbollah on that.
And Liz, as efforts to secure that ceasefire continue, of course, Hezbollah says it's fired missiles at an Israeli military base near Tel Aviv. What kind of a threat does Hezbollah still pose to Israel in this moment?
Well, it's sort of constant harassment, I would say, because the interceptor system is very good. Nevertheless, there are injuries. For example, Hezbollah fired a missile that landed in central Israel, and the debris hurt 5 people. We don't know whether the projectiles hit the base that you referred to, but there have been rockets every day. They sometimes hit houses, sometimes shrapnel hits people. And it must be said that Israel is getting its licks in too. Today, it hit a building in central Beirut near the parliament and killed 5 people. So both sides seem to be pushing as hard as they can militarily until a ceasefire shuts down the fighting, and we're not there yet.
As you know, the UN yesterday said that a convoy of aid trucks in Gaza were violently looted. Do we know who's behind the looting, and how bad is the situation of getting critical aid to those folks in Gaza? Is that still continuing, even though the President of the United States has asked Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do more to ensure that aid makes it through?
It is very serious. The people of Gaza have barely enough. In some areas, they haven't got enough. That convoy that you referred to over the weekend, 100 trucks were stopped and looted. And of course, the aid ends up on the black market in Gaza, in markets at exorbitant prices that people there simply can't afford. Meanwhile, they're just not getting enough calories. At the moment, it's these aid trucks funneled down routes designed by the Israeli military that run into checkpoints. Armed men come, take the aid, sometimes wound the drivers, even kill them, and then get away. And the aid agencies say the Israeli Defense Force needs to do something about this. After all, they're the occupying force in Gaza, and they should have the responsibility to make sure the aid gets to those who need it. We haven't heard a response from the IDF today, but clearly this issue is getting more and more attention, and that's going to put them under some more pressure to do something, although it's so dangerous in there. Some of the agencies have described the situation as anarchy, and of course there's an enormous potential for a lot of people to get hurt or killed, either defending the aid or trying to steal it.
Indeed. Elizabeth Palmer reporting this evening for us from Tel Aviv. Liz, as always, we appreciate you. Thank you. All right. Will President-elect Donald Trump be criminally sentenced in a few weeks? A New York Supreme Court justice is set to make a ruling that could impact that decision. We'll have it for you a little bit later. Some breaking news to share with you. We have an update to a report we brought you earlier this hour. U.S. officials now confirmed to CBS News that U.S.-supplied long-range missiles have been used on Russian targets and on Russian territory. Let's bring in CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata, who broke that information for us. Charlie, what more can you tell us?
Yeah, well, Vlad, you know, we've been chasing it all morning. You and I discussed it just a few moments ago. So there's a report that broke overnight. First, it was Ukrainian media that had reported that ATACMS had been launched against the Russian target. Then the Russians themselves said, well, it looks like ATACMS. It could be a combination of ATACMS, drones, Storm Shadow, which is the British version of the ATACMS. So now we have confirmation for the first time. CBS News can confirm that these long-range ATACMS have been used on Russian targets on Russian soil, and that is a first. So the ATACMS have been used inside Ukraine for a number of months by the Ukrainians on Ukrainian soil against possibly Russian targets. They have sometimes been armed with cluster bombs, which kind of minimizes the range. But at its longest reach, it's about 190 miles. And if the target is, and we haven't confirmed that the target they're referring to is the target, because this is an ongoing operation, is the way it's been described. If that is indeed the target, that's just at the outer reach, about 190 miles. And, you know, we call it long-range weapons. They are ballistic missiles. They're tough to intercept. One of the reasons the Russians are concerned about it. But Russia's a big place, as the Pentagon continues to tell me. You know, 190 miles from the border, they've still pulled a lot of their assets, especially their aircraft, out of the range of the ATACMS long before the green light was given to use them.
And so, Charlie, we talked about this a little earlier, but what could potential Russian retaliation look like?
Well, you know, Vlad, you can say to yourself the Russian retaliation has already begun, right? You've seen this incredible bombardment over the weekend, and it's a very tragic, cynical thing to say, but this is seasonal. You know, I've been there in the winter when the winter begins, and they go after the infrastructure, they go after the electricity, and it can be brutal in Ukraine when they do that. So when President Putin decides to go ahead and escalate, it's not necessarily that he's going to target, you know, Western powers, although he's made those threats, or NATO or the United States, he's made those threats. He can unleash fury on the people of Ukraine. However, he has stepped up, and they said it had to do with timing, so he didn't refer to the green light for the ATACMS, but he sort of lowered the bar, the threshold on Russia's nuclear posture, essentially stating that if Russia is attacked by a non-nuclear state, like Ukraine, with the backing of a nuclear state, like the United States, without using those words, Russia has the right to defend itself. And he also mentioned if Belarus is attacked, that Russia can fire up its nuclear arsenal. But I spoke to officials here. First of all, it's a threat that they are taking seriously, but they haven't seen anything to indicate a change in posture, a movement of weapons. And there are sort of alarm bells that they keep a close eye on. So, yes, it's rhetoric. Whenever President Putin speaks of nuclear arsenals, they take it seriously here, but nothing to suggest it's been any change in Russia's nuclear posture.
All right, Charlie D'Agata with that breaking news for us this morning, live from the Pentagon. We appreciate it, Charlie.
Thanks, Vlad.
All right, a New York judge is expected to make a decision soon on whether presidential immunity will protect President-elect Donald Trump from his hush money conviction. Defense attorneys claim the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity for official act should apply in this case. I want to bring in CBS News political reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman. She's joining me live from South Padre Island, Texas. That's near where the president-elect will watch a launch of a SpaceX missile this afternoon. Not missile, I guess, rocket, we should call them, right, Katrina? So let's talk about this. Last week, Judge Juan Merchan delayed his decision. Could the judge delay it again?
Vlad, it's really up to Judge Merchan's discretion how he wants to handle this. Last week, when the prosecution asked him for more time to assess how they want to proceed, now that Trump is the president-elect, he decided to give them a week. Their filing was due this morning. We're not yet sure when it will become public, but Merchan has some decisions to make. For one, he could still release this presidential immunity ruling regardless of whether he's still going to sentence Trump later this month. It's really anticipated that it is highly unlikely that will happen now that Trump has been elected president. It's more likely we would see a sentence after his presidency, if that's even going to happen. But hopefully we'll get this presidential immunity ruling sooner.
So what we're learning now, Katrina, I'm just checking my phone here, which is that the New York court has adjourned that November 26th sentencing of the president-elect in that hush money case. That's coming via Bloomberg. So what does that tell you?
I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all. And I don't think it actually means that he's dismissing the case altogether. There are real constitutional arguments here, Vlad, that it would just place an undue burden on the transition into the presidency, on Trump taking office, to have him sentenced now, or to have a sentence even looming over his head. There's, of course, the possibility of jail time in this case, as unlikely as it may be. You could also say that it could hurt the public perception of the president if he had been sentenced and then takes office and he's dealing with foreign governments. So there are a lot of strong arguments for not having that sentencing now.
All right, so let me ask you about this, Katrina. Trump went to trial and was found guilty of those 34 felony counts. Could this at all be thrown out? I mean, what's your sense of that?
I would say that it's unlikely applying the presidential immunity ruling to this case would lead to completely throwing out the verdict. For one, the key action at the heart of this case took place before Trump was even president. And the things that happened while he was in office could be arguably deemed personal actions, not official actions, which are what are protected under the presidential immunity ruling. There is some possible argument that evidence came in before the jury that shouldn't have. If Mershon thinks that, for example, testimony from Hope Hicks or Madeleine Westerhout, who both worked with Trump in the White House at the time, shouldn't actually have been let in under this ruling, that's possible, but it could also just be viewed as harmless error. If he deemed that certain testimony should not have been allowed and was significant enough that it would have changed the jury's verdict, there is also a chance he could decide to retry the case, ask for a retrial, or this could just remain intact.
All right, Katrina Kaufman live for us this morning. Again, the breaking news that the New York court has adjourned that November 26th sentencing of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump in that hush money case. That is news coming into the newsroom this morning. Katrina, as always, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, lawmakers on Capitol Hill are pushing for the release of a House ethics report into alleged sexual misconduct by Matt Gaetz, a top Democrat on the committee, tells CBS News why she thinks it's imperative that the report be released publicly.
It absolutely should be released to the public, and well, it should certainly be released to the Senate, and I think it should be released to the public, as we have done with many other investigative reports in the past. There is precedent for releasing even after a member has resigned.
All right, I want to bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland, who's joining me now from Capitol Hill. All right, Scott, so some lawmakers want that report to be made public. Is it simply a matter of time before we see it?
If it's going to be leaked, yeah, it's a matter of time. If it's going to be formally released, well, that's up in the air. Vlad, we know the House Ethics Panel, the ones who have this report in their hands, meet tomorrow. Could have a vote tomorrow to decide whether to publicly release this thing. It would have to be a bipartisan vote. It's an evenly split panel, 6 members from each party. Somebody has to go to the other side to get a majority and make this thing public. If it's going to leak, well, yeah, then it's a matter of time, but we wouldn't expect that to happen before tomorrow's meeting. But I can tell you the reality in the U.S. Senate. Members of both parties of the Senate would like to read this thing. Those senators who will have to vote on whether to confirm or not confirm Matt Gaetz would like to read through it. That's a bipartisan dynamic. I'll tell you something else that's bipartisan, Vlad. They are just chafing right now at all these questions they're getting about Matt Gaetz. They are reluctantly taking them. They are trying to, in some cases, avoid them. They are now eager to serve as senators and not as responders to Matt Gaetz questions, but right now they are facing the latter, not the former.
All right, Scott, let me ask you about what's happening right now on the Hill, which is that the head of FEMA is testifying. What kind of questions are they getting from lawmakers?
Oh, there's going to be a whole range here, Vlad. Deanne Criswell is coming to the Hill on the heels of these 2 massive hurricanes to which her agency has responded, Helene and Maria. There have been some concerns, some reports that there was a FEMA employee who was urging others to avoid homes and door knocking at homes that had Trump signs. That employee is gone from the agency, was removed in short order, but Criswell will likely answer questions from Republicans about how that possible allegation could be. But also, the administration has just requested nearly $100 billion in emergency disaster funding from Congress. And members of both parties in Congress have been itching to vote on this, too, because there's a backlog of needs in western North Carolina, in Georgia, in Florida, in the wildfire areas out west and in the Northeast. And this money needs to be appropriated in short order. There's a deadline of December 20th, but Vlad, Congress and the administration don't want to wait that long. They say that money was needed yesterday. We'll see how fast they move and what Administrator Criswell says about her agency's needs for that money.
Yeah, indeed. Scott McFarland reporting for us this morning. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you. All right. The drinking water is finally safe in Asheville, North Carolina, some 7 weeks after Hurricane Helene crippled the city's water system. As you heard, Scott McFarland there, the head of FEMA, is on the Hill answering questions from lawmakers about this because yesterday city officials announced the boil water advisory had finally been lifted, but it's taken some time, and residents across the city and in other parts of the state are still cleaning up after that historic storm. Helene, I'll remind you, was responsible for more than 100 deaths in the state of North Carolina alone. Let's bring back CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with another look at the national forecast. Grant.
Talking about one storm and now talking about another storm, Vlad, this Pacific storm that is beginning to inundate parts of the Pacific Northwest and portions of the central California coast. There's two sides of this storm. I want to talk about the first side, which you've probably heard about, this bomb cyclone. Essentially what that means is this low pressure system, you can see that swirl there off the Pacific Northwest coast. That bomb cyclone has gone through bombogenesis. Essentially, it has dropped 24 millibars in 24 hours, meaning it is strengthening rapidly. The second side of the storm is this plume of water vapor or moisture that's stretching all the way back into the Pacific Ocean. That atmospheric river is going to fuel just days and days of rain and heavy snow in the higher elevations. Look as that low pressure system just spins off the Pacific North coast or Northwest coast as we head through the next couple of days. It probably won't be until the weekend until this low pressure system finally begins to clear out. But between now and then, some significant impacts expected from California, really northern California, all the way to the Pacific Northwest coast. We're looking at power outages, travel disruptions because of heavy rainfall, flash flooding, heavy snow, upwards of 3 feet of snow in some places. Rainfall totals could be upwards of 20 inches. And then we're looking at some strong gusty winds that could get up to 80 miles per hour. Several winter weather alerts in effect, including blizzard warnings just east of Seattle this morning due to this gusty winds and that heavy mountain snow that is expected as we head through the next several days. Wind gusts at times could be between 60 to 70 miles per hour. You see those winds finally beginning to relax as we go into Thursday. Not before, though, more rain begins to move in. There's that low pressure system. Watch as the heavy rain continues to move from southwest to northeast up there in northern California into Oregon. And then another recharged low pressure system comes in and keeps that rain moving into portions of the same places that get that heavy rainfall with the first round. 8 to 12 inches of rainfall. Significant concern for flooding along northern California into portions of southwestern Oregon. The rest of the country, it's still active. Actually, the first atmospheric river that moved into the west coast now producing heavy rain from the northern part of the states into the North Gulf Coast. Cooler weather now arriving into the mid-Atlantic. Vlad, back to you.
All right. Interesting stuff, Grant. Thank you very much. The defendant accused of fatally stabbing the founder of Cash App takes to the stand today. We're going to have the very latest on his testimony in the high-profile murder trial. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following for you this morning. A state judge struck down Wyoming's abortion ban and its first in-the-nation ban on abortion pills. The judge said the laws violated a woman's right to make her own health care decisions under the state's constitution. An appeal to the ruling is expected. In Texas, a piece of sheet metal fell from the roof of the Dallas Cowboys home stadium just hours before kickoff last night. It happened as crews opened the retractable portion of the roof for the first time since 2022. The object fell an estimated 800 feet down to the field. Luckily, the stadium was mostly empty and no one was hurt. The Cowboys say strong winds contributed to the incident. And a Hong Kong court has sentenced 45 pro-democracy activists and former lawmakers to jail time under a controversial Beijing-imposed national security law. Police arrested dozens of people and charged them with conspiracy to commit subversion for holding an unofficial primary election back in 2020. The judges sentenced leader Benny Tai to 10 years in prison. 44 co-defendants were given shorter sentences. 2 people were acquitted earlier this year. A California jury will hear more in the testimony in the murder trial of Cash App founder Bob Lee today. Tech consultant and defendant Nima Momeni is accused of fatally stabbing Lee. During the testimony yesterday, he claimed it was self-defense. CBS News Bay Area reporter Lauren Toms has been following the details of the trial, and she joins me now to discuss. So, Lauren, what did we learn during the last few days of Momeni's testimony?
Yeah, well, on the stand, Momeni said that it was a bad joke that sparked this violent altercation with Bob Lee. He said the two men were enjoying their night together, trying to find a place to cap off their night when they pull over and get out of the car. That's when Momeni said that he made a bad joke, telling Bob Lee that if it was his own last night in town, that he'd rather spend it with family than go to a strip club. Those words, Momeni said, sparked Bob Lee into pulling out a a knife from his front right jacket pocket, swinging twice at Momeni. But Momeni says using his self-defense and martial arts training, he was able to neutralize Bob Lee's arm, pushing it into his chest twice, possibly causing 2 stab wounds to Bob Lee's chest. Now, on the stand, Momeni says that Bob Lee walked away silently on his phone, no indication that he was fatally wounded. And it wasn't until well after this deadly altercation that Momeni says he learned of Bob Lee's passing. Now, on the stand, Momeni also said that even to this day, he's still unclear exactly how Bob Lee sustained those 2 fatal stab wounds to his chest.
All right, Lauren Tom's reporting for us this morning. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it. All right, more news ahead. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, we talked about this a little earlier in the broadcast. We want to take you to Capitol Hill, where FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell is testifying and addressing those allegations that some workers bypassed homes that had Donald Trump campaign signs on them during hurricane response. Let's watch.
Register for assistance. This employee wrote to about 11 staffers under her supervision that they should, quote, avoid homes advertising Trump, end quote. My senior leadership team provided me with this visual evidence that the employee had in fact issued this statement, these instructions, and they recommended that this employee be terminated. I concurred and directed the termination, and the employee was fired. I released a statement that day, and I will repeat what I said to all of my employees and the American people. This type of behavior and action will not be tolerated at FEMA, and we will hold people accountable if they violate our standards of conduct. I do not believe that this employee's actions are indicative of any widespread cultural problems at FEMA. FEMA, however, has taken appropriate action to ensure that this matter is fully investigated, and I am committed to ensuring that nothing like this ever happens again. In the meantime, we have sent a different team to the field to contact all of the homes that had been skipped over at this one employee's direction, and that work has been completed. Now, I know that this incident is on the minds of many members of this committee, and I will be happy to answer all of your questions about it. However, I hope that we will also have a chance to discuss the great work of our workforce and responses to both Hurricanes Helene and Milton, as well as the important challenges that lie ahead in the recovery effort across these states. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions.
All right, we're going to keep tracking this testimony on Capitol Hill. She's expected to deliver testimony twice, and we're going to obviously bring you updates throughout the course of the day right here on CBS News 24/7, so you want to stick around for that. But let's talk about the stars, specifically the stars that were out last night for the Los Angeles premiere of Gladiator 2. Paul Mescal and Denzel Washington walked the red carpet at the TCL Chinese Theater. It's, of course, a sequel to the blockbuster that brought home Oscar wins for both Best Picture and Best Actor back in 2001. Gladiator 2 will open in theaters on Friday, and it's going to go head-to-head with another huge blockbuster, Wicked. So will Wicked defy gravity? Or will you be entertained, Jason? Are you not entertained? All right, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore for a last look at the national forecast. See what I was doing there, Grant?
I am entertained. That well played, Vlad. Well played. Good. I'm going to have to convince my wife and my daughters to be able to see Gladiator 2, and they want to see Wicked. So we'll see how that turns out. Let's talk about the forecast. Big storm, massive storm hitting the Pacific Northwest coast over the next several days. We got wind gusts of 80 miles per hour. That's the low pressure system, the bomb cyclone. Then you've got the atmospheric river that's going to bring a ton of moisture, from 20 inches of rains up to 3 feet of snow in the higher elevations. Meanwhile, we've got flooding rains along the northern Gulf Coast. This is the leftovers from Tropical Storm Sarah. Vlad, a very active pattern across the country today.
Grant, everybody in the studio is so excited about this. Even our Florida director, Ryan Black. Thank you very much. All right, that does it for me, folks. Stay right where you are. Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco on CBS News.